Good morning, everyone. So, I was reading this Superdry article today. This was published yesterday in the Times, and it talks about how they are financially struggling at the moment, and they've got PwC, the consultancy, in trying to help them to identify areas that they can improve profitability. We need to think about the form of business. This is a PLC. They're answerable to shareholders. Shareholders will want a return on their investment. If not now, then maybe tomorrow. Nice mop statement there, however, in the future. And we understand that lots of retail is online, especially in the fashion industry. And clearly, COVID had a negative impact on the industry because more people are now used to buying online, even though there is a trend showing that people are starting to go back to the high streets and shopping centres, especially those big destination shopping centres, which is where we tend to find Superdry stores. So I was at Rushden Lakes the other day, and they've got one there, Milton Keynes, all those types of places, not so much the smaller high streets. Okay, and that's because of concentration of people who might spend money with them. So this made me think about distribution channels, and distribution is the unit, the lower sixth, are starting towards the end of this week, and I'll probably set this as their prep. But it also made me think of Edexcel Paper 3 this year, and we're looking at the clothing, retail and manufacturing industries, okay? And so in the context of clothing, retail, manufacturing industries and businesses operating in this market, this market is massive. This is global. This is local. It could be sole traders, a one-person company that's running something from a small shop. This could be the growth of C2C. How many of you are currently selling your second-hand clothes online through Depop and stuff like that? So you have vintage. I was trying to think of another one. So if you think about the growth in this industry, yes, we are talking about the pure plays. Pure Play is a company that only sells online. So ASOS is a great example. Boohoo, those sort of fast fashion industries. I can see an ethical supply chain question coming up. So ASOS will make a lot of their clothes outside of the UK. Correction there, they don't make anything. They get someone else to do it through, obviously, offshoring and outsourcing. But they also get a lot of their clothes made from the textiles industry that's based in Leicester. This Leicester, made in England, might actually help reinforce some of that brand identity. It could be that the location of manufacture adds value to it. My gut feeling is with ASOS and companies like Primark, so we're clearly going to do some research on those sorts of companies. It might be that keeping up with trends and keeping costs down might be more important than where it's made, however, in the future. Okay, so there's going to be customer trends. It's very difficult to not see a trend question coming and an ethical sourcing question. We can then, thinking about these companies, we then look at the mighty Frasers Group, which started off with Sports Direct. They did very well. Their position in the marketplace is selling other people's brands at a discount. So in some ways, they're riding on the back of the brand identity of Adidas. A possible question that may come up is to do with Nike. Nike have sort of had enough of companies selling their products on the cheap, and we know that Nike are trying to push a more B2C model, as in sell directly from Nike to customers through its stores and online, and they've reduced some of its distribution channels through retailers like JD Sports. So that was in the press a year ago, and that's roughly when your papers were written, just over a year ago probably. So it's those sorts of things. If we're thinking about distribution channels, it could be that Nike have decided to remove an element of their distribution channel and go B2C. Assess the likely impact of Nike not distributing trainers through JD Sports? Okay, so a nice question there. We can also see that with House of Frasers in Frasers brand portfolio, they've got some very good properties for the ones that they've kept open. So, for example, the other day I was at Rushton Lakes. I went into the building that used to be House of Frasers and it's now Frasers. Downstairs are all the makeup, and I got my nails done and all those things. And then upstairs there's Game, so because they own Game, the computer program games type of retailer, and also Sports Direct was up there as well. Okay, you're then looking around the floor in Frasers, and you see other brands that the Fraser Group have managed to acquire that we may not know that they actually own. So these brands are in different market positions, but it might be that they're all made in the same factory. Okay, comes back to distribution place, which is this unit. And as I say, this is a good one to look out for. You should read this article, and don't just look at it from the financial perspective that the article's written about. Think about it from a distribution channel. If they suddenly reduce their footprint on busy high streets and other people are still there, will this negatively impact their sales, or is their brand so strong that people are loyal to it that they can go online? Or will these guys need to spend a lot more money on marketing to persuade me to buy stuff from their website? If you think about the advertising you hear on the radio, I constantly hear about Amazon, McDonald's, Disney Plus, all those sorts of things. I hear about them all the time. They're constantly reminding me that I am loyal. Well, if they're reminding me all the time that I'm loyal, I'm not sure how loyal I am. Okay, so interesting way of perceiving radio advertising. So these are the research topics, which I won't go into too much, but you can pause and read them anyway. We'll be starting these after February half term. But yes, we're going to look at trends, social trends, fabrics, patterns. I'll be disappointed if we're not going to look at social influencers. For example, Kate Middleton goes out and buys a new dress and suddenly they're sold out throughout the whole of the UK in about 3 hours. Those sorts of things we are going to obviously think about. This is the bit that you might struggle with the independents. I'm not quite sure what they mean by independence. I would hope that they're not going to choose a tiny company, but they have in the past. So it could be that we will have some elements of the paper focusing on the big global companies. If it's a distribution channel, then it'll be quite easy to do that, I suppose. And it might be that they focus on the more small niche providers. Okay, the Fraser Group, are they an independent? Some would argue, but some would argue definitely not. Superdry, I don't know. But then if we're looking at some of these big firms, we're also thinking about the term conglomerates. We're thinking about those massive parent companies that might own lots of different brands in different sectors. Some of those may cross over and benefit each other. Maybe. And Primark's a great example of how that low price, perceived lower quality market position is in the same company effectively as Fortnum's and Mason's, not really a clothing retailer. So manufacturing locations, well, we've got globalization in there, and I've mentioned Leicester versus, for instance, Bangladesh or something. The impact, well, that's going to be macroeconomic stuff, probably. And if you think about your components of aggregate demand, GDP, circular flow of income, macroeconomic goals, those sorts of things, we're going to get those sorts of questions come up. Clearly there's going to be a financial 12 or 20 marker in there, maybe something in another question, but I would expect a 20 marker on investment in a new factory or entering a new marketplace or something like that. So standard sort of questions, really. We've got the growth of UK clothing retailers, okay, and there are some big growth stories. We've got some examples here and with the Fraser Group, even though the Fraser Group has sort of grown rapidly on the corpses of failing businesses. Okay, oh, and them, and not so much them, but yeah, Karen Millen. Where's Karen Millen gone? You know, they bought them, and what do they do with them? Who knows? It could be that we're going to look at, obviously, the entrepreneurs in the industry, and what better company than the Fraser Group to base some of our research on. And then we'll think of other things as well. So we've got distribution methods down the bottom, which is the whole point of this video. And yeah, I would pay attention to this video and make sure that you are revising everything, but think about this in context with your research theme. We'll cover this a lot in class, upper sixth. Lower sixth, hope you're still watching, because here we are. So this is an article that I have sent out to you before. This is from earlier in the month, and yeah, we can see Greggs are planning to open up 160 new shops. Okay, that keeps rolling, sausage rolling in. We also, first thing we need to do again is look at the form of business. The form of business is PLC. Yay. Hang on, how are they going to do 160 stores really quickly? Well, if you go onto their website, you will see, and we'll explore that in a second. But think about it. A PLC that wants to open up all these stores very quickly. Think about Costa and how they rapidly grew in the UK in the early days. So, some lovely branding on their website. So I popped on there this morning and started clipping stuff out. So these are the bits from the unit, and changing from product to service orientated, you need to make sure you're thinking about the company. So for example, in context with Greggs, I'm thinking, you know, the product is a sausage roll and the service isn't necessarily me not buying sausage rolls and you talking to me about sausage rolls. It might be a change in the atmosphere. It could be their in-store experiences. It could be tastings when I'm wandering past the shop. It could be localized opening hours. Yeah, I'm thinking that different towns, different cities have different foot flows of people. It could be the physical location of my distribution channels, my shops, and thinking about who might be more likely to buy a Greggs. So let's open them up next to a Pret-a-Manger, for example. Lots of people might be going there for sandwiches already. They suddenly see it's half the price next door. Maybe they try Greggs. That's a nice bit of advertising. Just by placing it next to a competitor, it might be that they get customers. It might be that people choose Pret because they feel that Pret is a more premium branded sandwich experience. Maybe, who knows? But then again, we could be thinking about next to Pizza Hut, or maybe on their restaurants, not just takeaways. Greggs extended their product portfolio a while ago. You can now get a tray of pizzas, a tray of donuts. So think about all the things that they could do just because of distribution, and how this links into other parts of the extended 7 Ps of the marketing mix. So I also quickly looked at this as well, thinking about different market segments, and I didn't know that this even existed until this morning. So you've got stuff that's basically nearly out of date. So this must be some stores that suddenly say this stuff is not selling, and I don't think it will. My customers want stuff that's fresh. Let's quickly get this to an outlet. Now, I didn't do the research on exactly where these outlets were, but I'm thinking that maybe the customers that live there might be more price sensitive. So they've obviously done some research and they've thought about exactly where to put these outlets. Maybe you're getting a sausage roll for 10p or something. I don't know, but it's worth another case study. I think it's a shame this year's research theme is fast fashion, and clearly if I do too much Greggs research, I won't fit into that new dress I've just bought. So let's do some theory here. You can read the screen. I'm not going to read this out to you, but we need to think about all distribution. We need to think about, from concept, from the design of my dress through to negotiating with the manufacturers in China, talking about the fabrics and the dyes and all of these different things. Are we investing in new machinery to automate clothing manufacture? Well, that's a huge amount of upfront costs, but it might reduce error rates, it might improve quality. Machines don't tend to get pregnant or want holidays or pay rises. And also it might be easier to suddenly put on an extra couple of hours a day to keep up with supply and demand. If we don't get something to do with capacity utilisation in the supply chain, I'll be disappointed. So let's hope that we get something like that, because it'll be a beautiful question. So we're now thinking there's the value of going into my Superdry store. When I go in there, always come across very happy people, clearly, until they see that I probably won't be able to fit into their clothes. So you have to think about the value of that face-to-face interaction, as opposed to how can you create the more tangible experience in clothing retailing online. So, returns policies. Whenever I buy a dress, I normally buy two in different sizes. Well, hopefully one of them will fit me, the other one's going to be sent back. So it could be the impact of free returns on a company. And there's lots of companies that have tried that and exited it very quickly because they realised how expensive it was. So we need to think about it. Also, those retailers that are out there, I think consumers, especially consumers like me, when I go into a retail store, I'm expecting a positive shopping experience. And if I do have someone grunt at me when I walk through the door, I will walk out and probably never buy anything from them online either. The perception of choice has changed because of the internet. The barriers of entry for new joiners has reduced a lot, because obviously it doesn't cost a lot to start up a website, but you have to think about all the logistics behind it. We might see a big case study on DHL and how I, as a small company, can literally give my stuff to DHL or to Amazon. They will put it on a pallet. You will order stuff, a customer will order stuff from my website that will go straight through to DHL. DHL will stick it in a bag and send it to my customers. So in some ways, the massive economies of scale of distribution, for example, could be offset by the big players in the distribution network. Don't think that DHL, for example, are just a parcel company. A couple of miles away from where I live, there is a massive Primark. It's like a village more than a distribution centre. And it's 100% run in partnership with DHL and Primark. DHL are brilliant at distribution and negotiating with entire supply chains. Why wouldn't you use them? Well, maybe they don't want to deal with you because you're so small, but something we will explore. So there's the article from that, and that's the article you can see I sent out earlier in the month because it was out on the 11th of January. Okay? So you might come across things like multi-channel or omni-channel, omni-channel being all channels. So multiple channels are quite important, and they need to complement each other. If I think I can get something cheaper online from Superdry, then maybe I walk into the store and then I buy it online. If I think actually I want to physically see this, I don't know, yellow sweat top, and then I'm unsure, then maybe going into the shop, touching it, feeling it, and then even if I don't buy, because I can't be bothered to carry a bag, or maybe I wasn't quite ready to buy, I go home and then I buy. As long as Superdry have got that sale, you could argue that there's a value in having the shops. And that's why Boden, yeah, I'm sure many of your parents bought you Boden stuff when you were kids. That's why Boden decided to move from a pure play to a multi-channel approach. Now, they don't have that many stores, just flagship stores in London, New York, but you can physically see their products if need be. And there's lots of social media around that customer experience in store as well. So some would argue that absolute pure play companies need to constantly remind me that I need to buy from them. Whereas if I can physically touch a product, I can try it on, Let's face it, a size 10 in Marks and Spencer's is probably a lot different than a size 10 in Superdry. Superdry sizings are probably more honest. Marks and Spencer's want me to feel thin. Therefore, they're a bit generous. Okay? Customer perception might not be quite true. So we're thinking about distribution as well. So in context with, clearly this isn't Superdry, I went onto my local Greggs site and put my postcode in. I said, find me Greggs. And I was surprised to see how many Greggs we have. Think about forms of business. Think about their business model. Think about their rapid expansion plans, and will they do it all themselves, or will someone else help them? Well, the someone else help them, linked into the Costa Coffee model of rapid expansion, is franchises. Now, this doesn't mean you're necessarily just opening up a franchise and all it is Greggs. That's one model, by the way, and you can go on and open yourself a franchise up. You could literally be my local garage, for example. We've got a Shell garage down the road. That's a franchise. That's owned by the people that run it. And they used to have a Costa franchise. A few years after that, they decided to move to Starbucks and took all the signage out for Costa and put Starbucks in, selling probably exactly the same coffee. And now they've got a Greggs. So they can sell the Greggs coffee, they get the frozen food that's delivered, they shove it in a freezer. The startup cost to run a Greggs franchise is relatively low. You just need a very good oven, which Greggs will supply you as part of the franchise deal. And then this is advertising, because I've gone onto my local Greggs, I'm fancying a sausage roll on a Sunday morning, and I can see that there are loads and loads of Greggs around. And we can see, there's my local one. I don't live in Raunds, but close enough. Okay, easy. Geographical locations, they've got lots. Not all of them are owned by Greggs, even though the ones in Corby High Street, for example, probably are. Now, I'm not sure if that's true, but as a consumer, I generally don't care. I just want a Greggs sausage roll. I just want one of their donuts. I might like the coffee. Well, hopefully the coffee is going to be standardised across the franchise network. The problem with franchising is if your franchisee gets it wrong, it could damage the reputation of your entire network. So it's the normal franchise argument. We're not going to see so much franchises to do with the clothing industry, but definitely for the food industry, it's a common business model. Okay, so yeah, how far from the target market is the firm? Well, they sell sausage rolls out of shops, so having more places around is going to be very important, not so much from a fashion perspective. Regional markets, well, how much do they change? And the upper sixth have researched the term glocalization, geocentric, polycentric, ethnocentric, and it could be that you're importing into a market because you're at the early stages of the product life cycle. It could be that rising star question mark that we explore in Boston Matrix. It could be that if in the future this turns to the rising star and it's an amazing opportunity, it might be that you decide to make your products more locally. With the clothing industry and planned lead times, well, as long as you get those lead times right and you can predict the weather, which is very important for the fashion industry, then maybe it's worth just making your stuff where it's cheapest. As long as you don't get negative press like we've seen with Primark and factory fires and Nike with children working in factories, then we'll see. Okay, so we're also talking about costs. So cost of distribution. So I mentioned from a Greggs perspective that my local garage will get in a delivery probably once or twice a week from Greggs. They will stick it all in the freezer, and something like sandwiches will be made up maybe by a subcontractor to Greggs, who then will brand it. So they will then drop those in maybe 3-4 times a week, depending how busy the place is. And they will also take away out-of-date stuff as well. In some ways, the franchisee will only pay for the stuff that they sell or waste. The problem is with that model is if they don't sell enough, then Greggs won't want to deal with them. And also, we've got economies of scale. The more you sell, the cheaper your unit price will be, probably. So we're thinking about expensive distribution methods. Well, if Greggs are taking frozen sausage rolls to 1,000 different retailers every week, per retailer, that's quite expensive. So you need to think about that in their overall costs. You then think about how much they can actually pass on to customers. Well, in my local garage, I'm presuming that their sausage rolls are slightly more expensive than buying them off Corby High Street. So there's convenience. Maybe I'm less price sensitive when I'm filling up my car with diesel, then I'll just pay the extra. If it is price sensitive, I've chosen Corby for a reason. It's one of those many relatively underprivileged towns in the UK. Maybe the locals in Corby are more price sensitive than they are in central London. Okay, maybe there's regional pricing strategies that come into this as well. Depending on the hook in the question, so we've got firms' profitability here, it could be aim to open more franchises. Okay, it could be improve quality. It could be change market position. There's loads that we could be using our distribution channels for. Now, the degree of control is very important from a Greggs perspective because a lot of their expansion is through their own stores, but it's also through the franchise model. We can see they've got 400 franchises here. I'm not sure if that's 400 stores or if that includes places like my local garage. I'm thinking it does because it sounds like a really big number and it's something to celebrate. And when Subways suddenly became the biggest franchise operation on the planet, it was because it was cheap to set up Subways and people went in and they thought they could make some money from it. Well, Subways are still there and they're still a large franchise network, but they're nowhere near as popular as Greggs. And before that, Costa Coffee. These things evolve over time with market trends. Okay, so this is the article which I am not going to read through. You can pause it. This is being borrowed. And you can see there's lots of quotes in here that I would be drawn towards. We've got, 9.4% jump. We've got their open 160 new stores after bumper Christmas sales. We can see their share price has gone up, which means there's more demand for their shares. Consumers of shares are thinking this is going to be a good deal. They like the story. They want to jump on board. Excess demand, limited supply of shares, share price goes up. We've got percentage change opportunities. We've got a 19.6% to 1.8 billion. Well, I could quickly do a reverse percentage change and work out what it was before. There's an opportunity for easy maths in this as well. So I could easily ask a 4-mark calculate question on this. Calculate the profitability of last year just to test your maths. And I thought that this was lovely as well. Britain is a long way off reaching peak Greggs. Yeah, that means, however, in the future, lots of opportunity for further growth, and this company is not finished yet. And if they continue to grow, then they will just continue until it is pretty much everywhere. Feels like that already. Okay, we've got a bit of history in here, which is quite nice. We've got rapid growth statistics again, and we can see, that customers have become more savvy over the last couple of years and think carefully as they spend their money. That's the branding message they want us to hear. Okay, this is value for money. No one wants to be cheap. No one wants to be known as that inferior product. If I want my tuna crunch sandwich at lunchtime, Pret's next door, Greggs next door to Pret, sorry. I'm thinking I'm going to save about 30 to 40% off of my sandwich. It's tuna, it's a bit of onion, and it's in between a couple of slices of bread in a plastic packet. There's not going to be a huge amount of difference other than my perception. Maybe I'll go to Greggs. So We've also got online distribution as well. You need to think about the product. Yes, I can have my loyalty app. Yes, I can order my food and just walk in and pick it up like you can in a Costa and a Starbucks. But we're not on home delivery as much, other than we are seeing things like Just Eat. You're able to order your Greggs in certain cities. So this could be a however in the future. This could be assess the likely impact of consumers moving towards home delivery of fast food items. Okay, maybe they'll jump on the bandwagon. I'm thinking lots of this is convenience. I don't speak to many people who say, do you know what, I'm going to drive 20 miles just so I can have a sausage roll. But then again, look how busy McDonald's have suddenly got because of Deliveroo and Just Eat. In some ways, it's sort of a saving grace for them. So, this is the prep task for the lowest sixth. At the moment, some of you are writing very long essays, even when I ask you not to. So, this week you're going to have your normal knowledge prep, read a chapter, answer some questions. It's probably going to take you up to an hour. And then you're going to answer 3 essay questions. Okay, and I'll show you them in a second. 3, more than 1. Unless I've forgotten how many questions there are, it might be more. So you're going to use the case study and you're going to plan the questions. I'm going to want to see evidence of planning in the way that we teach you in class. Not a great big long poster, because you're not going to do that in the exam, are you? Planning each of these questions will literally take you about 30 seconds plus identifying some evidence from the case study. Easy. You're then going to answer the questions 1 minute per mark. You've already had the 0.2 minutes for planning. You've probably spent more than that on your planning, let's face it. I want you to be honest with yourself, and I want you to write each of these 1 minute per mark. I want you to use the marking grids. I've put 10 in there. I should cross that out. I've not put a 10 marker in. I've put the marking grids over here for you and a little bit of a hint of the structure. Okay, so you've done this before. That's just a bit of a reminder. Clearly, you are going to be aiming for the top levels. So when you do task number 3, you're going to mark using K, App, and AJ. AJ will obviously just be for the 12. And then also we're expecting a future-orientated MOP statement in there as well to support your judgment. Okay, work on your judgments, please. Questions. This covers most of the unit in context with Greggs. Assess the likely reasons, positive, negative, for Greggs choosing to expand its physical store network by opening 160 new shops. Okay, we know we need P however, because we want these wide-ranging arguments. Okay, wide-ranging, more than 2. Well, P however is 2 of those is 4, and then you're going to answer the question. Your justification will compare, as in, if they didn't, without opening, those sorts of things, you're then going to think about the future. Easy, okay? What's the hook in the question? What's the knowledge that needs to be demonstrated? Start off with a contextualized definition. Don't just go straight into your answer. Then we're thinking about online distribution. Assess the likely disadvantages for Greggs if it were to significantly shift its focus towards online distribution. Now, you're going to have to use your own interpretation of the case study for this, because there is some move towards online distribution. Believe it or not, this is part of your case study. But what if, okay? If, hypothetical, maybe it's a shift towards online and not so much through its shop network. How would that impact this company? Now you need to remember we need balance. So if you only answer the question, one disadvantage is, another disadvantage is, and you move on, there's no balance at all, we will cap you at half marks. Okay, so this is the structure. One disadvantage is, however, the benefit could be. Okay, and that however is in context or you will not get the marks. Then we're thinking about obviously changing from products to service. I'm thinking virtual sausage rolls, probably not. Assess the likely impact on Greggs of diversifying from its product-centric model to incorporating more service-orientated elements, such as extending evening hours and in-store experiences. So I've given you some examples in the question here, which means if you just repeat those, it's not context. So you need to contextualize in-store experiences. You need to contextualize the extended evening hours. Okay, don't just repeat what's in the question because it ain't context. Okay, enjoy.